All right, welcome to Hannity. For the full hour, by the way, our coverage of the FBI's alarming raid at Mar-A-Lago. We're going to go into specific details that I promise you won't get from the mainstream media. We'll go through it slowly. We'll check in with Senator Marco Rubio. Paul Manafort, he went through a pre-dawn raid, guns drawn, no knock. John Solomon, the great one, Mark Levin, will all join us live tonight. And here now, more than 24 hours have passed, and scores of heavily armed FBI agents stormed into President Trump's private home at Mar-A-Lago in Palm Beach unannounced for their raid. This is totally unprecedented. It should be deeply, deeply concerning to every American citizen. It should transcend politics. Not only is President Trump a former U.S. president, he is also Biden's chief political rival. So naturally, the White House is very short tonight on answers. Take a look.
On a different topic, the FBI is serving a search warrant on the former president's residence in Florida. Was the president or anyone at the White House aware of that search warrant, or has anyone at the White House or the president been briefed in the aftermath of that search warrant being executed?
No. The president was not briefed, was not aware of it. No one at the White House was given a heads up. No, that did not happen.
All right, let me be extremely clear. As someone who's one of the loudest supporters, if you watch this show or listen to my radio show, of law enforcement on TV and radio in the country for decades, after years of witch hunts, political persecutions, the Russia hoax, frankly, our Department of Justice, our FBI's reputation is already in tatters, especially with anything related to Donald Trump. And now this, especially Biden's FBI and DOJ, that have had Hunter Biden's laptop for years, a laptop that implicates both Hunter and Joe Biden, the big guy, himself in numerous crimes and lies. And they have not lifted a finger at the FBI or the DOJ to bring justice to the Biden family. Frankly, unfortunately, I say this. I no longer believe that in this great country of ours that we have equal justice under the law, nor do I believe we have equal application of our laws in this country. If your last name is Clinton or Biden, you likely get a pass. If your last name is Trump, or if you are an associate with anything Trump, you get the heavy-handed tactics of pre-dawn raids, guns drawn, and in some cases, even fake news CNN cameras. Again, let me be very clear. I used to always say on this program during the Russia hoax, 99% rank and file FBI agents put their lives at risk, work hard to keep this country safe. Tonight, I say it's about 95%. There are a lot of good people in the FBI and in law enforcement and in the intelligence community. The FBI and the DOJ, they have sadly earned the country's distrust, especially the upper echelon, which we now know has been and continues to remain rotten to the core. Now, this raid reeks of political bias and intimidation. You had total silence from Christopher Wray at the FBI, total silence from Merrick Garland at the Department of Justice. Apparently, they answer to nobody, least of all you, the American people. Why was this raid conducted? Americans deserve answers tonight. Even Mitch McConnell is asking for them. And by the way, Jim Jordan wants answers on Friday. Director Wray and Merrick Garland ought to go before Congress. According to reports, the FBI was looking for presidential records requested by the National Archives from Trump's time in the White House. Well, call me a skeptic. I don't buy that for 1 second. This likely does not have much, if anything, to do with the National Archives. Well, you don't raid the president's home before dawn with dozens of agents for a few documents that may or may not belong to the National Archives. In a statement from February, the National Archives said that they obtained, quote, full cooperation from Trump officials and were already working with them to transfer key documents. The FBI agents on the scene reportedly took every document in sight at Mar-A-Lago without even bothering to read any of the material. And according to Eric Trump on this show last night, and numerous other sources that we have on this program, the FBI refused to allow the president's attorneys to watch what they took. Why not? And it gets worse. The judge who reportedly signed off on the warrant, big Obama donor, by the way, and once represented Jeffrey Epstein's employees as their attorney. I'm sure he's a man of great character. Obviously, this was a fishing expedition in search of something, anything, and now we're finding out that a Trump ally, Congressman Scott Perry, he just had his phone seized by the FBI earlier today. Again, no explanation whatsoever. We'll have more on this in a moment. After all the DOJ and the FBI lies and all their conspiracy theories, their 3-year-plus long hoax, including the FBI insurance policy of Peter Strzok, they have now earned the loss of trust for we, the American people. The deep state, sadly, is alive and well in this country, and we are now witnessing a dark new chapter into the persecution of Donald Trump and, sadly, the weaponization of our Department of Justice. Now, you may ask, why would anyone who's a Republican and conservative trust the Biden FBI and the Biden DOJ? First, they tried, remember, this same FBI, Department of Justice, same institutional people. They tried to make a connection between Trump Tower and the Alpha Bank, a major Russia institutional financial institution, and that the servers were inside a Trump Tower. It was a bogus story. It's been totally debunked. Then they moved on to the fake claims from the dirty Russian dossier. That was the collection of Russian disinformation bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump's opponent in 2016, and the DNC. None of the claims in that dossier were verified or even verifiable. They've been debunked, but that didn't stop the FBI, the top echelon, from using that phony material not once, not twice, but 4 times as evidence in 4 separate FISA applications against Trump campaign ad Carter Page. They used the warrant by lying to the FISA court, even when the subsource of Christopher Steele said none of it's true. And they used it to backdoor into the Trump campaign to spy, and then, of course, spy on then President Trump and the Trump transition team and the Trump presidency. Can you imagine that? And, of course, the media mob, their allies, they lied to you, the American people, for over 3 long years. Everything we reported has been vindicated. This led to the Mueller probe. That led to a 2-year witch hunt that ultimately found nothing, despite a nonstop legal barrage against nearly everyone in Trump world. Now, former campaign manager Paul Manafort, remember, he faced a pre-dawn raid, guns pointed in his face, his wife's face, followed by numerous financial charges dating back to his time as a consultant. He spent weeks and weeks and months in solitary confinement. He was paraded around in shackles like a serial killer. He will join us tonight. Roger Stone, he endured a pre-dawn raid. The FBI even put FBI frogmen in the water behind Stone's house, and someone invited fake news CNN cameras to film it all at 5:30 a.m. And meanwhile, you know what happened to Lieutenant General Flynn? His family was treated with legal charges before that. And Flynn was purposely misled by, Director James Comey himself. He wanted to take advantage. I sent them of Trump's new administration the first few days when he was in office. Then George Papadopoulos railroaded with a process crime. More recently, Peter Navarro, handcuffed, shackled at an airport publicly, humiliated because of a misdemeanor. Usually tell somebody to report at this time or we will send people out and execute a warrant. Hillary Clinton put America's national security at risk by storing classified material on her private server. Do we have equal justice in this country? She tried to cover it up, we know, by destroying evidence, including wiping hard drives with something we never knew or heard about before called BleachBit. She destroyed phones with hammers. She returned other phones without the SIM cards, meaning without anything in them. She deleted over 30,000 official emails. And at the height of that investigation into these emails, Hillary's husband, Bill, was having a strange conversation with Obama's Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, during a private meeting on a tarmac of an airport in Arizona. Naturally, after the State Department report found 500 violations surrounding this private server scandal, Hillary was never charged with a crime. Her home was never raided. Hunter Biden also encountered a pre-dawn raid. Oh, that's right, that never happened. He's yet to face any charges also. The president's son was filmed himself smoking crack on multiple occasions. That's against the law. There's a mountain of evidence that he frequently hired prostitutes, including those trafficked from overseas. He also lied on a gun application. He'd lost track of that handgun that ended up in a dumpster near a school. At the same time, Hunter raked in millions and millions and millions of dollars from foreign nationals and countries for no apparent reason other than and access to his father's position as vice president in government. Hunter took $4 million from Ukrainian oil gas giant Burisma. He took $3.5 million from the former First Lady of Moscow. He took part of a multi-billion-dollar sweetheart deal with the Bank of China, $1.5 billion. He had a $100,000 family shopping spree, compliments of a Chinese Communist Party official. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Where's that raid? And all told, Joe Biden, in spite of what he said publicly, he met at least 14 of Hunter's international business partners. I never one time discussed with my son any of his foreign business dealings. Now, many of those encounters were photographed, but for some reason, Joe denied ever discussing business with Hunter. He lied to you, the American people, and we have evidence of that lie. And by the way, it's all on Hunter's laptop, which is not Russian disinformation. And Director Wray and the FBI have had it longer than anybody, and nothing has happened. Peter Navarro shackled at an airport for a misdemeanor. Roger Stone gets his house raided for a process crime. Hunter Biden can apparently do anything he wants, and he'll get away with it. And as for those National Archive records that suddenly triggered the raid at Mar-A-Lago, here's how you know it's complete and total BS. One former top aide for Bill Clinton named Sandy Berger. Remember Sandy the burglar? Yeah, he tried to steal and did steal classified material about 9/11 right from the National Archives. In other words, he went into the National Archives, found the documents he was looking for, shoved them down his pants, on his backside, into his socks, and walked out. And Sandy Berger was punished with a mere slap on the wrist, a misdemeanor and a fine. And everybody in the media mob and Democrats, he was just being sloppy. He was sloppy. He didn't mean to take him when he threw it right down his crotch. He didn't mean that at all. He had no idea that was classified material that made his way into his underwear. A former president of the United States gets a pre-dawn raid. Does any of this seem normal to you? On top of 3 years of Russia conspiracy, lies, hoaxes, misinformation, propaganda, and an abuse of power and corruption like we've never seen in history before. On Twitter, House Leader McCarthy told Merrick Garland to, quote, preserve your documents and clear your calendar for an investigation into the weaponization of the Department of Justice. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis compared the FBI's actions to something that happens in a banana republic. Virginia Governor Youngkin said that these kinds of politically motivated actions have no place in our democracy. Even Democrat, former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, declaring the DOJ must immediately explain the reason for this raid, and it must be more than a search for inconsequential archives, or it will be viewed as a political tactic and undermine any future credible investigation. That credibility, to me, has been long gone. Credibility of the FBI and the DOJ was always hanging by a thread. Merrick Garland, Chris Wray, they remain silent. And that silence tonight is deafening. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.